Let's cross now to Melinda Nucifora. She's in Lesvos for us, following this situation. Melinda, what's happening there where you are?
Nafisa, we're on the shore here in the northern parts of the island of Lesvos. I'm going to step out of shot straight away so my cameraman can show you what's happening. Another refugee boat has just pulled up here on the shore. I can hear a baby, I can hear children screaming. There's a child and she's in tears. These people are soaking wet and freezing cold, but they seem absolutely elated to have finally reached the land. The sea is very choppy today. It's incredibly wet. It's incredibly rough. It's incredibly windy. So the fact that these people have made such a perilous mission from the coastline of Turkey to get here to the island of Lesvos in Greece is actually quite amazing. I'm going to get my cameraman to show you a woman who just seems so happy to finally be on land. It's actually quite heartbreaking to see these pictures. I'm going to stop talking so you can hear this lady just for a few moments. Nafisa, as this boat was coming towards the shore, we could see them waving their arms and signalling to the Greek naval ship that was coming quite close to them. Because, as I said, the sea was incredibly rough and dangerous today.
Right,
and they were waving their arms quite vigorously to try and get the attention of the naval ship.
Right, we are watching those dramatic pictures coming into us from Lesvos. Our correspondent, Melinda Nucifora, is there. Now, we are staying with this. Thousands of refugees are marching across Turkey's borders, as you can see, arriving at Lesvos. Melinda, let's have in mind it's freezing cold out there.
Get his back. It is. This is a very different day to what we saw yesterday. Yesterday the sea was quite calm. It wasn't as windy. But today it's very, very rough. The sea is freezing. The wind is very, very fierce. So it's been a very dangerous journey, I can only imagine, for these people. There are hundreds of people waiting on the Turkish coastline, we've been told, for the opportunity to cross. But people didn't really think that people would cross today in the conditions this morning because of the way these seas are. So to see the fact that these people have arrived in such dangerous weather is really quite amazing.
Yes, Melinda, definitely. Let's stay with these pictures, dramatic pictures coming into us from Lesvos. As you can see, refugees just arrived ashore. The conditions there are quite difficult.
Nafisa, I can tell you that there are. Nafisa, I can tell you that there are a lot of humanitarian workers on hand helping these people. The job that they do here on the island of Lesvos is quite incredible. On all the Greek islands, I should say, is quite incredible. These volunteers were up at dawn waiting for the sight of any boats. They have spotters, they have binoculars all along the coastline. And we can't speak to any of the refugee workers just at the moment. They obviously have their hands full attending to the urgent medical needs of the refugees that have just arrived. They have food, they have blankets, they have medical supplies that they carry with them at all times just for events like this. This has been an occurrence that is ongoing here on these islands for so many years now. They almost have it down to quite a fine art as to how they respond to these situations. The humanitarian workers, though, I can tell you, Nafisa, have come under a bit of an attack themselves on some of these Greek islands because of the because of the dangerous conditions that the locals feel like they're under, because there are so many of these asylum seekers, these refugees arriving on their islands. The locals feel like they just can't keep taking any more people in. Their reception centres are overflowing. They're supposed to really only house about 3,000 people, but we see reception centres full of about 20,000 people, and the locals just don't feel like they can just keep accepting more and more arrivals because they're at bursting point. And unfortunately, some of that community anger has been directed at these humanitarian workers who are volunteering to try and allow these people safe passage. We have heard that some of their vehicles have been struck by rocks by some locals on some Greek islands, that they themselves have been attacked and threatened by locals who fear that because they do provide such service to the refugees when they come ashore, that it is almost as if they're welcoming them, and that it's not deterring people from arriving on the island. So it's a very difficult situation for the humanitarian workers when they themselves feel like they're coming under threat.
There's an emergency blanket.
Some of the people that we're seeing here are receiving some medical treatment. Obviously, a lot of it will be for perhaps a hypothermia type condition because it is very, very cold. I can see one little girl whose teeth are just chattering, so they're going to be getting some blankets and some warm thermal blankets onto them very shortly so that they can receive some medical treatment. They're very, very wet, these arrivals. They've obviously been battling some of those very rough seas, and their boat has taken on a lot of water. So I think they're going to need some quite urgent medical assistance. I'm just going to get my cameraman to come over with me at the moment and show you a young child who's with her mother. Just over here, a family having quite an emotional hug now that they've arrived here on dry land. The humanitarian workers are trying to get people to form a bit of a line so that they can take stock of how many people they have, what needs these people have. They need to count them. They need to try and get some kind of identification so that they can make sure that these people are given the assistance they require to now start what is the next step, which is a very long process of assessing their asylum seeker status, assessing their application for asylum, and that is something, unfortunately, that can just take months. So even though, as we've seen, they're so happy to arrive on dry land, they do have another huge process ahead of them. This is a very long and painful journey for these people.
Okay, Melinda Musifora, live for us from Lesvos. You're staying there. We'll keep an eye on those dramatic pictures and we'll come back to you, Melinda, in just a few moments ago. But now let's cross to Turkey-Greece border. Semir Seyfovic is there. He's just outside Edirne at the Bazar Kule border crossing. Semir, what's happening on the land border?
Well, the land border is also getting swamped with people. It is getting so crowded on the border that you are seeing on both sides of this border fields just flushed with people who are attempting of reaching Europe. Just now, maybe 5-10 seconds ago, you could hear a lot of use of tear gas and canisters, shock grenades to try to disperse the people. Since we've got here, I think we've seen about 1,000 to 2,000 refugees cross the border, and they are in between no man's land, between the Turkish border and the Greek border, and the influx of refugees is just pouring in. Just behind the camera, down the road, you can see more and more people are arriving. To our left and our right, you see people in the back. They have lit up fires to try and keep warm, as the night was very cold, as well as this morning. So we've seen a lot of children, we've seen a lot of families, women, and we've even seen old people who have told us that they are basically just trying to seek refuge right now here in Edirne.
Semir, have you talked to any of these people? Where are they from?
Well, most of the refugees that we've seen here are Syrian, Pakistani, and Afghani. Those are the refugees and the populations which we are seeing here right now. We've seen a lot of women with children who say they are from Syria, so that the actions taken by the Assad regime in Idlib in the past couple of weeks have further escalated the situation and have further pushed people into desperation. There's another 3 million refugees lining up on the Turkish border with Syria, so those people are also wanting to leave Syria as the war there escalates again. Now Turkey is already hosting 4 million people, and with the people and the refugees wanting to leave Turkey, this is they see this as their chance, and they're all trying to use it. We've seen buses, taxis, and vans all bringing refugees to the border, whether it be the border of Turkey and Bulgaria or the border with Turkey and Greece.
And in terms of numbers, how many refugees have you seen approaching this border since you arrived?
Well, I can confidently say that yesterday we arrived here in between 3 and 4 p.m. and the numbers were very low while we were arriving, even though we saw buses and taxis full of refugees on the highway heading towards Edirne Kapı here, and particularly here to Pazarkule. When we arrived here was, I could fairly say, maybe 400, 500 people, but as the night progressed, it's turned into thousands. So by 12 o'clock midnight last night, we have seen 2,000 to 3,000 refugees approach the border with Greece, cross the Turkish border, and they are stuck again in this no man's land, this tampon zone, which stretches in between the borders. So the refugees are lining up all along the border with the EU from the Turkish side. The Turkish authorities have made it clear that Turkey is not able to handle any more refugees, and that they will not be preventing the refugees from crossing into the European Union's borders, especially the ones that are that have had the wish to leave Turkey and that didn't register or didn't see themselves in Turkey. Remember, most of these people, even if they are registered in Turkey, their ultimate goal is to reach the European Union, and this is a window which most refugees, almost I can fairly say 50 to 60%, if not more, those residing in Turkey will try to use this chance of reaching Europe.
And Samir, what are the conditions like there where you are? Do they have enough food?
Well, there's nothing set up here. I mean, these refugees are just going it day by day. In the past, we've worked on a lot of documentaries for our program covering the refugee crisis in the Balkans, and if you observe, we are seeing very similar pictures like we saw in 2016 with the refugee crisis when it was at its peak. Me being here and witnessing what is happening just on this point is reminding me that we might be looking at a very similar situation happening again. Now, in terms of conditions, the night was very cold. It was a very rainy night. As I said, there was women and children, and people were out in the open. In the background, I hope you can see there's smoke all over, and that smoke is people making fires in the open, trying to keep warm before attempting to cross the border into the European Union. Another thing which we need to keep in mind is that if this influx of refugees continues in the numbers that it is happening right now, I think that all border patrols, whether it be the Greek border or the Bulgarian border, will struggle to sustain and handle the situation properly. As I said yesterday, there was a situation in which escalated very quickly as refugees attempted to storm the Greek border. The Greek border police responded with tear gas and shot grenades, and that was a shocking picture because among these refugees you had women and children, pregnant women and very small kids. So to see this gives you a feel of how disassociated governments are from understanding the pain and the refuge that these people are seeking.
Okay, Semir Sefovic, we'll leave it there for now. Live for us from Edirne at Pazarkule border crossing. We'll keep an eye on that situation there. Let's go back to Melinda Nucifora. She's in Lesvos for us. Melinda, what's happening there where you are? We've seen those dramatic pictures. We are hearing there is a pregnant woman that just arrived ashore.
Nafisa, she's one of 27 people who have just arrived on the northern point of Lesvos on board another refugee life raft. Again, I'm going to step out of shot so my cameraman Ahmet can show you what's happening here. There is a woman and she is very, very heavily pregnant. It was quite shocking. We knew that there was a child on board, but to see a woman who is obviously in the very, very late stages of her pregnancy, to take a risk, she's obviously incredibly desperate to get herself to Europe. It was a very, quite a heartbreaking thing to see. These refugees, we know that there are 27 of them. We understand that they're from North Africa, but from which country yet we haven't been able to ascertain. There was quite an elation as they came ashore. They were clutching at the ground and crying, yelling out that they were so happy to be here. I think the shock has now set in of what they've just endured. There's quite an uneasy silence over the crowd of people as they huddle together for warmth. One thing that has also struck us since we've been on shore watching this unfold is that these people, these 27 refugees, came aboard that life raft without any life jackets. They were given what looks like very flimsy rubber rings to keep themselves afloat if their boat was to go under. Now, those rubber rings looked incredibly thin. People had them around their waist as they got onto the shore. But the waves are so rough here today, the ocean is very aggressive, that if their vessel was to have overturned, I doubt very much that those rubber rings would have been able to do too much. So the fact that these people have paid people smugglers to get them to Europe without even any life jackets, in the weather that we have seen this morning, in the rough seas and the wild wave conditions that we've witnessed, it's really just quite shocking. It really is shocking. Now, the island of Lesvos, where we are, has a refugee reception centre that is built to house 3,000 people. It currently is overflowing with 20,000 refugees. And that has caused a lot of stress and a lot of tension for the local people. They say that they're at breaking point and they just don't know how many more people they can take in. So seeing another boat arrive while these humanitarian workers are doing such excellent work is going to cause even more stress for the local community when they are already really feeling the tension. They have come into clashes with police and with the local government and the federal government because of the conditions they feel like they're enduring, trying to look after the asylum seekers that arrive day by day. And this is just going to add to those tensions. You can see these pictures that our cameraman Ahmet is filming for us now of the humanitarian workers trying to put some foil under the wet clothing of these asylum seekers. Their teeth are really chattering. They're obviously incredibly, incredibly cold because they're very wet, and the wind here is just freezing this morning. So that's an attempt to try and prevent any hypothermia and to allow their bodies to try and reclaim some of its warmth and try and protect themselves from their wet clothing. The UNHCR, which is always on hand in these situations here on the Greek islands, have wrapped everyone in some blankets. They've all been given water, and we've also seen boxes of food, some small snacks, just to give people a little bit of energy, a little bit of sugar in their system as this reception process continues. We saw 2 boats arriving on Lesvos yesterday. A total of about 76 people arrived. Among them, about half were young children and teenagers, as well as a newborn baby. And we've seen here today a pregnant woman on board this raft that's arrived, and a young toddler, a little girl who just seems to be incredibly in shock. The Coast Guard is here at the moment. He's trying to take some people's details. They're trying to get a sense of who these people are, where they've come from, perhaps their ages, so that they can make sure that these people are processed efficiently and effectively and as quickly as possible, because this asylum seeker process is a very, very long one. There are some people that have been here in the reception centre on Lesvos for many, many months, and this is something that could take quite a while for these people now to go through that process.
Melinda Nucifora live for us from Lesvos. Thanks so much for that, Melinda. We'll definitely come back to you and keep an eye on that situation. There are some dramatic pictures coming into us, refugees arriving with boats in a difficult condition. They're very cold this morning, but we'll keep an eye on that. Okay.